I have nothing to prove. I give myself, and that's it. That's all I have to give. It's not all it's cracked up to be. It ain't all the glamour and all that stuff. It's hard work. It's a lot of work.
How do you feel about that kind of criticism?
I don't know. What do they want? What do they want me to do? I think music is music, you know? I mean, how do I sing more black, or how do I sing? What am I doing that's making me sound white?
Yesterday afternoon, when a member of Houston's entourage located her body inside this hotel. So far, police and the coroner are refusing to offer details about what may have caused her tragic death.
Just beautiful, I think, what she inspired, you know, no matter how, you know, things looked or were. What she inspired was great, and it inspires all human beings, I think.
Genuinely sad and feeling like, you know, it was just a horrible thing that happened and tragic. And I kind of tried to think about it, though, in a positive light and kind of think about celebrating what she did and celebrating her, because we all love her so much, and she was so, I mean, I'm not sure there's anybody on earth with a voice like that.
She was called the Voice, a singer whose talent was so extraordinary it seemed almost divine. Whitney Houston didn't just sing songs, she transformed them into emotional experiences that left millions in awe. She shattered records, redefined pop stardom, and inspired an entire generation of artists. From her angelic debut in the 1980s to her world-conquering role in The Bodyguard, she was one of the most celebrated figures of modern music. And yet Whitney's story was never simple. Behind the glamour, she faced intense pressures, personal struggles, and a world that often misunderstood who she truly was.
I mean, that's what makes it, that makes it real. The changes that we go through, the transition that we go through, the tests that we go through, being a mother, becoming a single mother. It all had its ups and its downs, but for the most part, I kept my faith, and I kept my head up, and I took my time.
The media called her a princess, then a fallen star, but rarely did they tell the full story of the woman behind the voice. So who was Whitney Houston, really? And why does her life remain one of the most misunderstood in music history? Whitney's journey matters because it isn't just about fame, it's about the crushing expectations placed on Black women in entertainment, about the danger of being idolized one moment and vilified the next. Her story shows how the world can celebrate a gift, but fail to honor the person who carries it. Understanding Whitney means seeing beyond the headlines to grasp what it truly costs to be extraordinary. Her misunderstood life isn't only about music, it's about the complexity of being human while the world demands perfection. But even legends start somewhere. Long before the fame, the glamour, or the headlines, Whitney was just a girl in Newark with a voice that couldn't be ignored. Whitney Elizabeth Houston was born on August 9th, 1963 in Newark, New Jersey, into a family where music wasn't just a passion, it was a legacy. Her mother, Cissy Houston, was a renowned gospel and soul singer who worked with icons like Aretha Franklin. Her cousins were none other than Dionne Warwick and Dee Dee Warwick, both music legends in their own right. From her earliest days, Whitney was surrounded by voices that carried both pain and power. She grew up singing in the New Hope Baptist Church choir, where her soaring vocals caught attention long before she ever dreamed of fame. At just 11, she stunned congregations with a voice that was mature beyond her years. But Whitney was more than just a singer. She was also strikingly beautiful. By her teens, she was working as a fashion model, becoming one of the first African-American women to appear on the cover of 17 magazine. Still, music was her destiny. In the early 80s, she began singing backup for Chaka Khan, Jermaine Jackson, and Lou Rawls. her voice was already undeniable. When Clive Davis of Arista Records discovered her performing at a New York nightclub, he saw not just a singer, but a star who could change the sound of pop forever. Yet raw talent alone wasn't enough. Whitney's debut wasn't just good, it was historic. What followed was a rise so fast, the world could barely keep up. Whitney's debut self-titled album in 1985 wasn't just a success, it was a phenomenon. Songs like How Will I Know and Greatest Love of All made her a household name. She wasn't just crossing genres, she was breaking down barriers. Whitney was a young Black woman dominating pop radio, a space that was often reluctant to embrace Black artists unless they fit narrow molds. Her second album, Whitney, 1987, made history as the first by a woman to debut at #1 on the Billboard charts. Singles like I Wanna Dance with Somebody cemented her as a global superstar. By the late 80s, she wasn't just an artist, she was a cultural force. But with that fame came expectations. She was often criticized by some in the Black community for being too pop, accused of abandoning her R&B and gospel roots.
A lot of your Black audience has been a little bit critical in the last year about your singing songs that were less in the soul tradition or in the gospel tradition, that you went a little too far to the pop side. How do you feel about that kind of criticism?
I don't know. What do they want? What do they want me to do? I think music is music, you know? I mean, how do I sing more Black, or how do I sing, what am I doing that's making me sound white? I don't understand, you know? I'm singing music from my heart, from my soul.
The infamous moment at the 1989 Soul Train Awards, where she was booed for being not Black enough, cut deep. It was a painful reminder that while she was breaking barriers, she was also caught in a tug of war between audiences who wanted her to fit their version of authenticity. And then came the moment that would change everything, the role, the song, the soundtrack that made Whitney more than a star. She became a global phenomenon. If the 80s made her a superstar, the early 90s made her untouchable. In 1992, Whitney starred alongside Kevin Costner in The Bodyguard. The film itself received mixed reviews, but the soundtrack became one of the best-selling albums of all time. Her rendition of Dolly Parton's I Will Always Love You was more than a cover. It was a cultural moment. The song spent 14 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a defining anthem of the decade. Whitney wasn't just dominating music, she was also redefining what it meant to be a crossover star. She could act, sing, perform live, and embody glamour in a way that felt effortless. Her national anthem performance at the 1991 Super Bowl, delivered during the Gulf War, was so moving that it charted as a single. Whitney had achieved the impossible. She was both America's sweetheart and a global diva. And yet, even at her peak, cracks were forming. The higher she climbed, the harder it became to maintain the image of perfection. But even as her career soared higher than ever, her personal life took a turn the world would never stop dissecting.
You live in a world where you are Bobby Brown.
Yeah.
You're in the shadow.
Yeah. He supported me. He loved me. We fought hard. We loved hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at some point in time, other things began to take place.
Was he jealous of you?
He's not gonna like this, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
In 1992, Whitney married Bobby Brown, an R&B bad boy known for his wild behavior. To many, the marriage seemed like a mismatch, America's princess and R&B's rebel. The press quickly turned it into a narrative. Whitney is the victim, Bobby is the corrupting force. But reality was far more complex. Whitney was not simply led astray, she was her own person with her own struggles. While Bobby's substance use and erratic behavior contributed to their chaos, Whitney herself battled addiction long before the tabloids exposed it. reducing her life to Bobby ruined Whitney, stripped away her agency and humanity. The couple welcomed a daughter, Bobby Christina, in 1993. Whitney adored her, but parenting while under constant media scrutiny only added to the pressure. The tabloids reveled in their dysfunction, painting Whitney as a fallen angel. But what they failed to capture was the reality of a woman carrying immense pressure from fame, family expectations, and her own inner battles. Behind the curtain, the cracks became impossible to hide. Soon, the voice that once silenced stadiums was being drowned out by scandal and speculation. By the late 90s, Whitney's personal struggles began to overshadow her music. Reports of canceled shows, weight loss, and erratic behavior dominated headlines. Interviews, like her infamous crack is whack moment with Diane Sawyer in 2002, became viral tabloid fodder. The world was no longer focused on her voice, but on her perceived downfall. Her reality TV appearances with Bobby Brown in Being Bobby Brown shocked fans. The woman once presented as elegant and flawless was suddenly seen in raw, unfiltered moments. While some saw honesty, others judged harshly, reinforcing the narrative of a fallen diva. What was misunderstood, however, was the depth of her humanity. Whitney was struggling with addiction, yes, but also with an industry that treated her like a product, not a person. She was expected to maintain a flawless voice and image, even while her private life crumbled. Still, Whitney wasn't finished. Even after years of pain, she wasn't ready to let the world forget who she was. Despite her struggles, Whitney never gave up on music. In 2009, she released I Look to You, her first studio album in 7 years. The album debuted at #1, proving that the world still longed for her voice. Songs like the title track revealed a more vulnerable Whitney, a woman who had weathered storms but still stood tall. Her voice was not the same. It was huskier, less agile, but it carried a depth that reflected her lived experience. For many fans, hearing Whitney again was like reconnecting with an old friend. The comeback was brief, however. Touring proved difficult, and her health continued to decline. Still, those who saw her live knew that even in imperfection, Whitney's presence was unmatched. She was no longer the flawless diva of the 80s, but she remained one of the greatest vocalists of all time. But just as whispers of redemption began, tragedy struck. The news no one wanted to believe became impossible to ignore. On February 11th, 2012, the world was stunned.
Yes, good morning, George. It happened here at 3:43 yesterday afternoon when a member of Houston's entourage located her body inside this hotel. So far, police and the coroner are refusing to offer details about what may have caused her tragic death.
Whitney Houston was found dead in her Beverly Hills hotel bathtub on the eve of the Grammy Awards. She was just 48 years old. The cause? Accidental drowning, with heart disease and cocaine use as contributing factors. The tragedy was devastating not just because of her death, but because of what it symbolized. The world had witnessed her brilliance, her struggles, and her decline, but rarely her humanity. Even in death, the tabloids sensationalized her final moments, overshadowing the decades of music and joy she had given the world. And yet, Whitney's story doesn't end with loss. What she left behind is far greater than the headlines. It is a legacy written in music, memory, and love. Whitney Houston's legacy cannot be measured by the tabloid headlines that haunted her later years. She remains one of the most awarded female artists in history, with over 200 million records sold worldwide. Her influence echoes in the voices of Beyoncé, Jennifer Hudson, Adele, and countless others who cite her as their inspiration. She was the first Black woman to achieve certain milestones in pop, opening doors for others to follow. She brought gospel into pop in a way that was both authentic and universal. and she redefined what it meant to be a crossover artist without losing her cultural roots. Her misunderstood life reminds us that even legends are human. Whitney was a woman who carried extraordinary talent, but also extraordinary burdens. She loved, she struggled, she triumphed, and she fell. But above all, she lived as someone who gave the world her voice. Whitney Houston's story is often told as a tragedy, but to reduce it to that alone is to miss the truth. She was misunderstood, not because she failed, but because the world expected her to be flawless. She was fragile yet strong, flawed yet divine. Her voice remains eternal, her music timeless, and her impact immeasurable. The misunderstood life of Whitney Houston is not defined by her struggles. It is defined by the brilliance she shared with the world. She was more than the voice. She was a daughter, a mother, a friend, and an icon whose humanity deserves to be remembered just as much as her music.